The billionaire was minutes from losing 300 million when a timid voice changed everything. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you're watching from this story of courage that defied all impossible limits. The marble floor of the 42nd floor gleamed under fluorescent lights that hummed like distant wasps. Sophie Miller pressed the mop forward, earbuds tucked beneath her hair, a French pronunciation lesson whispering conjugations she'd already memorized twice. Her mother, Grace, wiped the panoramic windows overlooking Manhattan's steel canyons, movements practiced and invisible. "Sophie, honey, take those out. Don't want anyone thinking you're not working." Grace's voice carried the weight of 12 years cleaning these corridors. Sophie obeyed, coiling the white cord around her phone. At 23, she knew every inch of this building, every office where men in suits made decisions that shifted markets while she and her mother remained ghosts in the machinery. "Mom, one day I'll work here, really work here, not cleaning, but something that matters." Grace smiled, tender and sad. "I know, baby, but for now let's finish before they arrive." The elevator opened with violence. 3 men in charcoal suits burst through, half carrying a fourth, grey-haired, vomiting into a plastic bag. "Call an ambulance, Pierre's sick." Sophie and Grace flattened against the wall, becoming furniture. But Sophie heard everything. "Shit, he's the only one who speaks fluent French. How do we close the Paris contract? The investors arrive in 20 minutes. Ethan's going to kill us. This deal is worth $300 million. Then he appeared. Ethan Blake moved like winter. 35 years of calculated power wrapped in a black suit that cost more than Grace's annual salary. His jaw could cut glass, his blue eyes arctic and absolute. He didn't walk through space. He commanded it. "Where's Pierre?" "Mr. Blake, he collapsed. Hospital, he can't translate today." The silence that followed was a held breath before an explosion. "Find another translator now." "Sir, there's no time. Every professional is booked or—" "I don't accept excuses. You have 15 minutes to solve this, or everyone here is unemployed by lunch." Grace tugged Sophie's arm, trying to slip away. But something in Sophie refused to move. She watched these powerful men panic, and for the first time in her life knew she could help. Her voice emerged trembling but clear. I can do it." Every head turned. Ethan Blake noticed her for the first time. A young woman in faded jeans and a simple T-shirt, brown hair in a ponytail, holding a bucket of soapy water. "What?" "I speak French fluently. I can translate for you." A director laughed, sharp and cruel. "Ethan, she's the janitor's daughter. We can't put her—" "You speak real French." Ethan cut him off, blue eyes fixed on her with surgical intensity. Sophie swallowed, holding his gaze. "Oui, monsieur. Je parle couramment le français, l'anglais et le portugais. J'ai étudié seul pendant des années. Je peux vous aider." The silence returned, different now. Ethan Blake studied her face for 3 endless seconds. "You have 10 minutes to change. Wear something presentable if you ruin this meeting. Not just you, but your mother will never work for any company I know. Understood?" Ice crystallized in Sophie's veins. But she nodded. "Yes, sir." Grace squeezed her daughter's hand, eyes flooding, half pride, half terror. Ethan turned to his directors. "Prepare the conference room now." As everyone scattered, he murmured to himself, staring at the city below. Sometimes destiny speaks a language that logic doesn't understand. Sophie stood in the women's bathroom, borrowed blazer hanging loose on her shoulders, hands shaking against the cold porcelain sink. She could hear her heartbeat in her ears, could taste copper fear on her tongue. Through the door crack, she saw Grace making the sign of the cross, lips moving in silent prayer. The receptionist who'd lent the blazer touched Sophie's shoulder. "And you've got this. I heard you speak French to that tourist last month. You were incredible." Sophie met her own eyes in the mirror, brown and wide and terrified. "What if I'm not enough?" "You already are." They just never noticed. The glass doors of the conference room reflected Sophie's approach like a mirror showing an impossible future. Inside, Ethan Blake stood at the head of a mahogany table worth more than Sophie's entire life. Adjusting his cufflinks with mechanical precision, the elevator chimed. 3 men in tailored suits and a woman in sharp glasses emerged. expressions carrying the casual superiority of old money. The leader. Monsieur Beaumont shook Ethan's hand with protocol coldness. Monsieur Blake, nous espérons que cette réunion sera productive. Où est Pierre? Before Ethan could respond, Sophie rose with borrowed confidence. Smile natural despite her hammering pulse. Monsieur Beaumont, Pierre a eu un malaise ce matin. Je suis Sophie Miller et je serai votre interprète aujourd'hui. C'est un honneur de vous recevoir. The French woman arched an eyebrow. Surprise flickering not just at fluency, but at Sophie's perfect Parisian accent. Vous avez étudié à Paris. Sophie smiled, humble but steady. Non, madame. J'ai appris dans les bibliothèques publiques de New York. Les livres ne jugent pas d'où vous venez. Something shifted in the room. The French investors exchanged glances. Impressed, Ethan Blake, expecting functional translation, realized Sophie was doing more. She was winning their sympathy. The meeting began. Numbers flowed like water, projections mapped futures, risks were calculated. Sophie translated each word with surgical precision, but also with warmth. She read their body language, adjusted Ethan's tone when necessary, transformed cold declarations into persuasive arguments. When Monsieur Beaumont made a subtle joke in French about American arrogance, Sophie translated, then added with a smile, "And Mr. Blake would like to say that confidence isn't arrogance when you have results to support it, but he also respects French prudence. After all, it was Paris that taught us elegance and power can walk together." Beaumont laughed for the first time. Ethan looked at Sophie, intrigued. She wasn't just translating, she was negotiating. 2 hours later, the contract was signed, 300 million secured. As the French investors left, Beaumont turned to Sophie. "Vous êtes extraordinaire, mademoiselle. Si vous cherchez du travail à Paris, appelez-moi." He handed her a card. Sophie accepted with genuine gratitude. The room emptied. Sophie stood alone with Ethan Blake. He studied her for a long moment, hands in pockets, expression unreadable. "Where did you learn all this?" Sophie breathed deep, the borrowed blazer suddenly feeling like armor. "The public library on 42nd Street. I learned French from audiobooks while serving coffee at a diner. Watched YouTube videos at 3 a.m. when my mum slept. I always wanted to be more than I was allowed to be." Ethan took 2 steps toward her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive cedar and smoke. "Why didn't you ever try for a job interview here?" Sophie laughed, but without joy. "Mr. Blake, people like me can't get past security without a cleaning bucket in our hands. The world doesn't give second looks to janitors' daughters. We're invisible." He fell silent, as if those words had struck somewhere he didn't like visiting. "Not anymore. You work for me now. Officially, translator and international negotiations assistant, market rate salary. Start Monday." Sophie's legs weakened. "Mr. Blake, I don't have a degree. I don't have—" "You just saved a $300 million contract. That's worth more than any paper on my office wall. Monday, 8 a.m. Don't be late." He left, leaving Sophie alone, holding Monsieur Beaumont's card with trembling hands through the glass door. Grace Miller watched her daughter, tears streaming down weathered cheeks. The smell of burnt coffee hung in the Queen's apartment. Like a ghost, Sophie had learned to ignore. She was 12, knees pulled to chest on a lumpy couch, held together with duct tape and hope. A library book open in her lap. French for beginners. Grace stumbled through the door at 2 a.m., uniform stained with industrial cleaner, shoulders bent under invisible weight. 3 jobs, always 3 jobs. Daycare worker, office cleaner, weekend grocery stocker. "Baby, you should be sleeping." "I can't sleep, Mama. The words keep spinning." Grace sat beside her daughter, calloused hands smoothing Sophie's hair. The gesture smelled like lemon disinfectant and love. "Your daddy would be so proud. He always said you had something special inside." Sophie closed the book, pressing it against her chest like a talisman. "Tell me again about him." "He worked construction, strong hands, gentle heart. Day you were born, he held you and whispered in Portuguese, "Ela vai voar onde eu nunca pude. She'll fly where I never could." He died building someone else's dream. "No. Baby, he died building yours." The memory dissolved. Sophie stood at the mahogany table, Ethan's investors watching her with skeptical eyes. Monsieur Beaumont leaned back, fingers steepled. Mademoiselle Miller, your accent suggests formal education, yet your file indicates minimal credentials. Sophie felt the old shame crawling up her throat, but she swallowed it down. My education came from late nights and library cards. Monsieur, from determination that credentials can't measure. Beaumont's eyes softened just slightly. Spoken like someone who understands true value. The 13-year-old Sophie sat at the New York Public Library. Headphones covering her ears, pronunciation tape rewinding for the 20th time. Around her, the homeless dozed in warm corners, students crammed for exams, and dreams were built between book spines. Mr. Owens, the elderly librarian with kind eyes and bow ties, paused beside her table. Still here, Sophie. Your mother know you're studying instead of heading home. She thinks I'm at basketball practice, he smiled. Pulling a book from his cart, advanced French conversation. You're too talented to waste hiding. Promise me something. What? When you make it big, and you will, you'll remember that knowledge doesn't care about zip codes. Sophie nodded, not quite believing him. In the present, Ethan watched her navigate the negotiation like a dancer interpreting music. She caught every subtext, every unspoken concern, translating not just words, but intention. When the investors left satisfied, he approached. You just made me look like I understand human beings. You don't. Not usually. Something flickered across his face. Vulnerability. Quickly shuttered. How does someone learn 4 languages alone? You have time when you're invisible. The 16-year-old Sophie balanced plates at Mike's diner, grease-stained apron covering thrift store jeans. Earbuds hidden under her hair, French verbs played on loop while she refilled coffee, cleared tables, smiled through exhaustion. A businessman left without tipping. Again. Hey, sweetie, Mike called from the kitchen. You're too smart for this place. Smart doesn't pay rent, Mike. Neither does wiping tables apply to college. With what money? With what grades from that joke of a public school? Mike slid a bacon cheeseburger across the counter. Her secret favorite. Dreams don't wait for permission, kid. The memory tasted like regret and grease. Sophie walked through Blake Tech's corridors after her first official week, still unable to believe the nameplate on her desk. Sophie Miller, international translator. Security guard she'd known for years, now nodded with respect instead of looking through her. Grace cleaned the 38th floor, pride and worry warring on her face. You okay, Mama? Baby girl, castles collapse fast for people like us. Just be careful. I'm not in a castle. I earned this. I know, but sometimes the world doesn't care what we earn. Sophie hugged her mother. Breathing in that familiar lemon cleaner smell that meant home, Ethan found Sophie at midnight, alone in the conference room, practicing Mandarin with cheap headphones and a tattered notebook. He leaned against the doorframe. Tie loosened, looking almost human. Don't you ever rest. Sophie yanked out her earbuds, startled. Mr. Blake, I was just preparing for the Beijing meeting next. Sophie, he entered, closing the door. When we're alone, you can call me Ethan. Her heart accelerated dangerously. That wouldn't be appropriate, sir. He smiled, rare, transformative. Nothing about you fits appropriate corporate standards. Yet you're the most valuable person in this company after me. Sophie flushed, dropping her gaze. I just do my job. Ethan sat beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Can I ask something personal? She nodded. Nervous? Why don't you ever ask for anything? You negotiate millions for this company, but still wear the same worn coat every day. Sophie bit her lower lip. Vulnerable. Because I still don't believe this is real. Every morning I wake thinking I'll go back to mopping floors. People like me don't. We don't stay in places like this. We just visit. Ethan took her hand. Impulsive, surprising them both. You're not visiting. Sophie, you belong here. I'll prove it to you. Their eyes met. Air thickened with something unspoken, dangerous, inevitable. The door opened violently. Victoria Hale entered, heels announcing presence before words. Tall, blonde, impeccably dressed. She'd been Ethan's executive assistant for 6 years, secretly in love with him since day one. Ethan, the Beijing documents are ready. I thought you'd gone home. Her voice was silk. But her eyes sparked, seeing their hands separate quickly. "I was just reviewing some points with Sophie." Victoria forced a smile cold as January. "Of course, Sophie, dear. You don't need to stay so late. I'm sure your mother's waiting for you downstairs in the service area." The comment was subtle, venomous. Sophie felt the knife twist. "You're right. Excuse me." She gathered her materials, fleeing quickly, feeling Victoria's eyes on her back like twin laser points. When the door closed, Victoria turned to Ethan. "You're getting too attached to her." "Victoria, don't start." "Ethan, I've managed your life for 6 years. I know you better than anyone, and I'm watching you develop feelings for an employee who comes from a different world." "A different world?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Dangerous. You know what I mean? She's talented, yes, but you're mixing business with something else. It's dangerous." Ethan stood, voice low but cutting. "Careful, Victoria. Your job is advising on business, not my personal life." He left, leaving Victoria alone, fists clenched, rage simmering. She opened her purse, pulled out her phone, typed a name into Google, Sophie Miller. Nothing. No LinkedIn profile, no university, no professional references. Victoria smiled, ice crystallizing in her chest. 3 months transformed Sophie Miller from invisible to indispensable. Her desk sat 2 corridors from Ethan's office, but she felt his presence in every decision. Every email, every glance that lasted half a second longer than professional. The Tuesday morning video conference with Tokyo executives stretched into its 2nd hour. Sophie translated technical jargon seamlessly, her voice steady even as she navigated cultural nuances that could make or break the deal. "Miller-san demonstrates exceptional understanding," the lead Japanese executive said in his language, not realizing Sophie understood. "Tell Blake-san we are honored to work with someone who respects our protocols," Sophie translated, adding subtle warmth to Ethan's response. The deal closed, 15 million in new contracts, as the screen went dark. Marcus Chen, the art director, appeared in the doorway with 2 coffees, one regular, one with way too much sugar, exactly how Sophie liked it. "You're terrifying, you know that." He handed her the sweet coffee. "Watching you work is like watching someone conduct an orchestra." Sophie laughed, accepting gratefully. "Says the man who built this entire security system from scratch. Code doesn't judge me. People do." Marcus's smile faded. "Be careful, Sophie. Not everyone here likes watching you rise so fast." Through the glass wall, Victoria Hale stood at her desk, watching them, writing something in her phone. Sophie felt the weight of that gaze like a hand on her throat. Grace pushed her cleaning cart past Sophie's desk during lunch, pride warring with fear on her weathered face. "Baby, you eating enough? You look thin." "I'm fine, Mama." Sophie walked her mother to the service elevator, away from judgmental eyes. "You heard about my promotion? Junior liaison for European accounts?" Grace touched her daughter's cheek, the gesture carrying 12 years of sacrificed dreams. "I'm so proud, but Sophie, castles built too fast sometimes have weak foundations. This isn't a castle, Mama. It's what I earned." "I know. Baby, just remember, people like us, we scare people who never had to fight, and scared people do dangerous things." The elevator doors closed on Grace's worried face. Liam Barrett, 5 years old with gap-toothed grin, ran through the executive floor, escaping his father during a brief office visit. He crashed into Sophie's legs, giggling. "Sophie, count to 10 in French with me." She crouched to his level, switching languages effortlessly. "Un, deux, trois. Un, deux, trois." Liam's pronunciation was adorable disaster. Ethan emerged from his office, watching the interaction. Something softened in his face, an expression Sophie had never seen before. "Liam, leave Miss Miller alone." "But she promised to teach me, and she's nice, not like the other grown-ups." Sophie ruffled his hair. "The other grown-ups are nice too, they're just busy being important. You're important and nice," after Liam's father collected him. Ethan lingered. "You're good with kids. I used to babysit before this." She gestured at the glass and steel surrounding them. "This suits you better." "Does it? Sometimes I feel like I'm wearing someone else's clothes." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Those are your clothes now, Sophie. You earned them." The corporate gala invitation arrived on thick cream cardstock with gold embossing. Sophie stared at it like a bomb. "I can't go to this." Marcus looked up from his computer screen. "Why not? You're invited. It's practically mandatory for senior staff. I don't have anything to wear. I don't know how to be around those people." "Those people, Sophie. You negotiate with millionaires every week. That's different. That's work. This is—" She couldn't finish that evening. Grace helped Sophie pick through thrift store racks in Queens, searching for something that wouldn't scream imposter. "This one's pretty." Grace held up a simple navy dress. "Slightly faded, but elegant. It's $50, Mama. For my daughter's first gala. That's an investment." Sophie tried it on in the cramped changing room. Fluorescent lights, harsh and unforgiving. The dress fit perfectly, hanging just right, making her look almost like she belonged almost. The Plaza Hotel ballroom glittered like a jewelry box lined with people who owned jewelry boxes. Sophie stood at the entrance, borrowed clutch trembling in her hands, feeling every eye assess and dismiss her. Ethan appeared at her elbow, elegant in black tie, looking like he'd been born in formal wear. "You came. You said it was important." "It is, but not for business reasons." Before she could process that, Victoria swept up, resplendent in designer crimson, diamonds at her throat worth more than Sophie's childhood home. "Sophie, how quaint is that vintage?" Her smile could cut diamonds. "It's from She Looks Beautiful." Ethan's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Shall we?" He offered Sophie his arm. She took it, feeling Victoria's fury like radiation. The evening unfolded in surreal montage. Sophie tasted champagne for the first time, bubbles that tickled and made her feel dangerously light. She made conversation with CEOs who assumed she was Ethan's date, not his employee. She watched Victoria watch them, predatory and patient. A silver-haired venture capitalist cornered Sophie near the bar. "So, Miss Miller, where did you study?" "Sorbonne, Columbia." "The public library?" "Actually," he laughed, thinking it was a joke when he realized it wasn't. His smile froze. "Oh, how resourceful." He left. Sophie felt herself shrinking, the dress suddenly feeling cheap again. Ethan found her on the balcony, overlooking Central Park's dark expanse. Hiding, breathing, there's a difference. He stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I hate these things too. Performance art for people who mistake money for personality. Then why come? Because sometimes the performance matters." He turned to face her. "But you're not performing, Sophie. You're just being yourself. That's why you terrify them." "I don't want to terrify anyone. I just want to belong somewhere." "You belong here, with me." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. The slow dance happened almost accidentally, or perhaps inevitably. Ethan's hand at her waist, Sophie's palm against his shoulder, the orchestra playing something classical and heart-wrenching. "I've never danced like this," Sophie whispered. "Neither have I. Not really." His blue eyes held hers. "Not with someone who makes me forget to count steps." They swayed, the world narrowing to breath and heartbeat, and the dangerous space between them. "Ethan, May I cut in?" Victoria's voice sliced through the moment like a guillotine. Ethan's jaw clenched, but protocol demanded courtesy. "Of course." Victoria took his arm, triumphant. Sophie escaped to the bathroom, locking herself in a stall, breathing through something that felt like drowning in air. Outside, Victoria worked her poison slowly. "She's charming, I'll give her that. But Ethan, have you actually vetted her? Background check, education verification?" "She doesn't need verification. I've seen what she can do." "What she can do, or what she's made you think she can do." Victoria's voice dripped concern. "I'm not trying to cause problems. I'm trying to protect you. You know how I feel about you." "About us. There is no us, Victoria. Not yet, but without distractions there could be." Ethan pulled away, disgust flickering across his features. "Sophie isn't a distraction. She's—" He couldn't finish. Didn't know how. Victoria smiled, already planning. In her apartment that night, Victoria opened her laptop, fingers flying across keys. She'd worked too hard, waited too long, invested too much. Sophie Miller had appeared from nowhere, threatening everything. She pulled up the Blake Tech employee database, accessed files that required executive clearance, found Sophie's thin personnel record, no degrees, no certifications, just references from a diner manager and a librarian, and one detail that made Victoria's smile turn predatory. Sophie had a cousin, Dante Miller, released from prison 6 months ago after serving 5 years for financial fraud. Victoria leaned back, champagne glass in hand, mind-spinning plans. The coffee shop on Lexington Avenue smelled like burned espresso and desperation. Victoria Hale sat in the corner booth, designer sunglasses hiding her identity. Across from a thin man whose fingers never stopped moving, tapping the table, adjusting his laptop, radiating nervous energy. "You understand what I need." Victoria's voice was ice. "Yeah, email trail. Make it look like she's leaking confidential info, untraceable back to you, traceable to her." The hacker, who'd introduced himself only as Zero, didn't make eye contact. "It's gonna cost you 20 grand. Done. I want it ready by Friday. Lady, you sure about this? Framing someone ain't just unethical, I'm not paying you for moral philosophy. Can you do it or not?" Zero shrugged, already typing. "Your karma, not mine." Victoria slid her envelope across the table, half the payment in untraceable bills. When she left, she didn't look back. Sophie stood in her cramped bathroom at 6 a.m., staring at the dress hanging on the back of the door. Simple black sheath, borrowed from Maria, her mother's co-worker. Tonight was the charity gala. Tonight everything felt different, charged with possibility. Grace appeared in the doorway, coffee mug steaming. "You're glowing. And baby, I'm terrified." "Same thing sometimes." Grace squeezed her daughter's shoulder. "Just remember who you are. Don't let fancy rooms make you forget." "What if I want to forget? What if I want to be someone who belongs in fancy rooms?" "You already belong everywhere. Sophie, you just gotta believe it." The Blake Tech boardroom at 9 a.m. Sophie presented quarterly projections for international expansion, her voice steady even as 8 executives watched with varying degrees of skepticism. "Our Tokyo partnership exceeded expectations by 40%. Paris investors are requesting expanded collaboration. Berlin is interested in—" Miss Miller, Harold Winters, CFO and Victoria's closest ally, interrupted. "These numbers seem optimistic. Do you have verification?" Marcus Chen, sitting at the back, interjected. "I ran the analytics personally, Harold. Sophie's numbers are conservative, if anything." Winters's lips thinned, but he nodded. After the meeting, Marcus caught Sophie in the hallway. "He's gunning for you. Why, I haven't done anything to him. You exist, you're talented, you're close to Ethan. That's enough." Marcus glanced around, lowering his voice. "Watch your back, Sophie. Corporate politics are blood sport, and you're not playing." "Maybe I should be." "No, that's how you become them. Just be careful." Sophie's phone buzzed. "Text from unknown number. Need to see you. It's important." Dante, her stomach dropped. Dante Miller waited at a Queen's diner that smelled like grease and regret. 5 years in prison had carved lines into his face, but his eyes held the same desperate charm that had gotten him in trouble before. "Sophie, you look good. Real good." She slid into the booth across from him, arms crossed. "What do you want, Dante?" "Damn! No hello. No welcome back to society. You stole from your employer. You dragged our family name through mud. Mom couldn't go to church for a year without whispers. So no welcome back." Dante's smile faded. "I made mistakes. I paid for them. Now I'm trying to start over, and I need help getting a job, just an entry-level thing, warehouse, mailroom, anything. I can't help you. Sophie, please, I got no one else. You're working at some big tech company now, right? I ain't asking for favors, just—" "That's exactly what you're asking for." Sophie stood. "I'm sorry, Dante, but I can't risk my reputation on yours." "Not again." She left him sitting there, the weight of his desperation following her into the street. What she didn't see, Victoria Hale's hired investigator, photographing the entire interaction from a car across the street. The gala evening arrived wrapped in Manhattan magic. City lights reflecting off black cars, women in gowns that cost more than mortgages, men in tuxedos discussing deals over top-shelf liquor. Sophie descended the Plaza Hotel steps. Borrowed dress clinging to curves she didn't usually acknowledge. Makeup applied by Grace's careful hands, feeling like an actress playing a part she hadn't auditioned for. Ethan waited at the bottom, and when he saw her, something in his expression cracked open. Sophie. Just her name, but the way he said it, like prayer, like discovery. Too much. Not enough. I don't know what I'm doing. You're perfect. He offered his arm. Let them stare. Let them wonder. Let them see I finally found someone real. Inside, crystal chandeliers scattered rainbow light across marble floors. Champagne flowed like water. Sophie tasted it carefully, bubbles tickling her nose. Making her feel weightless and reckless, Victoria watched from across the ballroom, crimson dress like a warning flag, diamonds at her throat, cold as her smile. She cleans up well, Victoria murmured to Harold Winters. Almost makes you forget where she came from. Does Blake know about her family, the cousin who... Not yet, but he will soon. The slow dance happened at midnight, orchestra playing Debussy, couples swaying like seaweed in gentle current. Ethan's hand spanned Sophie's waist, thumb pressing slightly, possessively. I've been thinking about this all week, he admitted. About dancing, about touching you. Sophie's breath caught. His eyes, those glacial blue eyes, had melted into something warmer, more dangerous. Ethan, we work together. This is inevitable. This is inevitable. He pulled her closer. Tell me you don't feel it. I feel it. That's what scares me. Why? Because people like me don't get fairy tales. We get reminders that we're from Queens, not Park Avenue. I don't care about addresses. You say that now, but when you wake up and remember I'm just... He kissed her right there, in front of 300 Manhattan elite. He kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. For 5 perfect seconds, Sophie believed in fairy tales. Then she saw Victoria over his shoulder, saw the hatred in those eyes, saw the phone in Victoria's hand. Screen glowing, message sent. Sophie pulled back, breathless. I need air. She fled to the balcony, Central Park spreading below like dark promise. Behind her, Victoria's plan activated like a bomb with a long fuse. By morning, anonymous emails would arrive in every board member's inbox. By afternoon, Sophie Miller's carefully built world would begin to crack. But for now, in this moment, Sophie stood alone under stars dulled by city light. Still tasting Ethan Blake on her lips, still believing she might deserve this, the night breeze carried the scent of coming rain. Somewhere in Queens, Grace Miller prayed. Somewhere in a coffee shop. 0. The hacker finished his work. Somewhere in the Plaza Hotel, Victoria Hale ordered another champagne, Victoria's smile playing at her lips, and somewhere in Sophie's borrowed clutch, her phone buzzed with an email marked urgent, an email she wouldn't see until morning. When it would already be too late, Sophie woke to 17 missed calls. Her phone screen glowed malevolent in the pre-dawn darkness of her tiny Bronx apartment, Grace's number repeating like a heartbeat. She called back, still groggy, still half dreaming about Ethan's hands on her waist. Sophie, Grace's voice was wrong. Thin, stretched. Baby, don't go to work today. What, Mom? I have the... Please, just trust me. Something's wrong. I heard the cleaning supervisor talking and I can't just not show up. I have responsibilities. Sophie. But Sophie had already hung up, already moving, already showering in water that never quite got hot enough. She dressed in her best blazer, still second-hand but respectable, and practiced her smile in the mirror. Everything is fine, everything is perfect. The lie tasted like ashes. Blake Tech's lobby at 7:45 a.m., usually buzzed with caffeine-fueled energy. Today, silence greeted Sophie like a held breath. Security guard Miguel, who she'd helped practice English for his citizenship test, looked away when she smiled. Miguel, everything okay? Just be careful today, Miss Miller. The elevator ride felt eternal. each floor climbing toward something Sophie couldn't name but could feel pressing down like atmospheric pressure before a storm. Marcus Chen intercepted her at the 42nd floor, face pale. "Sophie, don't. There's an emergency board meeting. You're—" He couldn't finish. "I'm what? Just let me grab my laptop. I need to check something before—" But Victoria Hale appeared, heels clicking like a countdown. "Sophie, the board needs to see you, immediately." The conference room that had once welcomed her now felt like a courtroom. 7 executives sat in judgment, faces carved from granite. Ethan wasn't there yet. She registered his absence like a missing limb. Victoria stood at the head of the table, laptop open, projector glowing with something Sophie couldn't quite see. "Thank you for coming." "Sophie, please, sit." Sophie sat, hands folded, every survival instinct screaming. "What's this about?" Victoria clicked, the screen filled with emails. Sophie's email address, timestamps, subject lines that made her stomach drop. Confidential bid information, investor list, urgent, contract terms attached. "No!" The word fell from Sophie's mouth like a stone. "I never—" "These emails originated from your computer." Victoria's voice held false sympathy. "It traced them definitively." Harold Winters leaned forward, shark sensing blood. "Miss Miller, we also discovered some interesting details about your background. Your cousin, Dante Miller, served 5 years for financial fraud. You met with him last week. Care to explain?" He asked for help finding work. I said no, that's all." "Really? Because we have photographs of you meeting him clandestinely. Witnesses who heard you discuss financial matters. That's not—" "You're twisting—" The doors opened. Ethan Blake entered, tie slightly loosened, expression thunderous. "What the hell is going on?" Victoria turned, performance perfect. "Ethan, I'm sorry you had to learn this way. We've discovered evidence that Sophie has been leaking confidential information. Given her family's criminal history and her suspicious meetings, the board believes—" "Show me." Ethan's voice could freeze fire. Victoria displayed the emails, the photos of Sophie and Dante, a dossier that painted Sophie Miller as a con artist who'd infiltrated Blake Tech through charm and deception. Ethan stared at the evidence. Sophie watched him, pleading silently. "Please, you know me. You know I couldn't." But she saw doubt flicker across his face, just for a second, but long enough to kill her. "Sophie." His voice was strange, distant. "Did you send these?" "No, Ethan, I swear on my mother's life, I never—" "Your computer. These came from your computer. Then someone used my computer. Someone set me up." Desperation made her voice crack. "Victoria had access. It has access. Anyone could have—" "So now you're accusing your colleagues?" Victoria's eyebrow arched. "That's convenient." Harold Winters cleared his throat. "Mr. Blake, I think the evidence is clear. We need to act decisively before this becomes public. Termination, possible legal action." "Give me a minute." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Everyone out. Sophie stays." The board filed out. Victoria lingering at the door, victory barely concealed, alone. Ethan and Sophie faced each other across impossible distance. "Tell me the truth." His eyes searched hers. "Just the truth." "I didn't do this." Tears burned. But Sophie refused to let them fall. "I don't know who did or how, but Ethan, you know me. You know I could never betray you. I thought I knew you. But these emails, your cousin, your background, Sophie, there are things you never told me. Because they weren't relevant. My cousin's mistakes aren't mine. My past doesn't define my integrity. In this world, everything defines everything." He turned away. Hands braced on the table. "I have a company, shareholders, responsibilities. I can't ignore evidence just because—" "Because what?" "Because you kissed me last night, because you said I was real." Sophie stood, voice breaking. "Look at me, Ethan. Really look at me. Do you see someone who would steal from you?" He turned, and she saw it. The war between heart and logic playing across his features. Logic won. "I have to make a decision based on facts, not feelings, then make the right one." Silence stretched like a chasm. "Sophie Miller, you're terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your belongings." If any further evidence of wrongdoing emerges, we'll pursue legal action." The world stopped. Sophie felt herself fragmenting, pieces falling like shattered glass. "You're serious?" "I have to be." "No. You have to be brave. You have to trust. But you're choosing the easy path. You're choosing paper over people." She grabbed her bag, dignity barely holding. "I thought you were different. I thought you saw me. But you're just like everyone else. I was only real to you when I was useful." "Sophie, it's Miss Miller," she shouted, all composure shattering. "And I hope you choke on your fucking evidence," she stormed out. Past executives who wouldn't meet her eyes, past Victoria's triumphant smirk, 2 security guards, one was Miguel, waited to escort her. "Miss Miller, please come with us." She walked through corridors she'd thought were home, into an elevator full of mourning staff who pressed themselves against walls, avoiding her like contagion. In the lobby, Grace saw everything. She'd been cleaning the marble floors, and now she watched her daughter being ejected like trash. "Sophie!" Grace dropped her mop, running. "What are they doing, baby? What happened?" "Ma'am, please step back." Security held Grace away. "That's my daughter Sophie, baby." "I'm okay." "Mama?" Sophie's voice was dead. "I'm okay." But she wasn't. She wasn't anything anymore. Outside, February wind sliced through her blazer. Sophie stood on the sidewalk, briefcase in hand, watching Blake Tech tower above her like a tombstone. Upstairs, Ethan Blake stood at his window, watching her small figure on the street below, whiskey glass trembling in his hand. Victoria appeared beside him. "You did the right thing, Ethan." Painful. But right. He didn't respond, could only watch Sophie walk away, disappearing into the stream of strangers, becoming invisible again. In Queens that night, Sophie burned the borrowed dress. Watched the flames eat the fabric, smoke rising like prayers God wouldn't answer. Grace held her daughter while she screamed into pillows, rage and heartbreak tangling until they were indistinguishable. And in Manhattan, in his empty penthouse, Ethan Blake drank until the memory of Sophie's taste faded from his lips. But it didn't. It never would. 3 months passed like years. Sophie stopped counting days. Let time become liquid, morning blending into night, seasons shifting without her notice. The Bronx apartment she'd once seen as temporary became prison and sanctuary simultaneously. She taught English at the community center on 149th Street, helping immigrant mothers pronounce words that might save their children's futures. The work paid nothing. It paid everything. Maria Gonzalez, a Colombian woman with calloused hands and kind eyes, stayed after class one Thursday. "Miss Sophie, you look tired. You eating?" "I'm fine, Maria. My daughter, she says the same thing before she breaks." Maria touched Sophie's hand. "Whatever you lost, it don't define you." "Doesn't," Sophie corrected automatically. "Doesn't," Maria repeated, smiling. "See, you still teaching. That means you still fighting." Sophie cut her hair short that week, 10 inches gone in a queen's salon chair. Brown waves falling like shed skin. Grace watched silent, knowing her daughter was trying to kill the woman who'd worn pearls and believed in fairy tales. "You're still beautiful, baby." "I'm not trying to be beautiful. I'm trying to be invisible." "Sophie, it's easier this way, Mama, being invisible." But invisible didn't stop the nightmares. Every night, the conference room, every night, Ethan's face choosing logic over love. Every night, she woke gasping, tasting betrayal. In Manhattan, Ethan Blake functioned like a machine. 18-hour days, brutal negotiations, ruthless efficiency. His employees whispered that he'd become colder, harder, unreachable. Only Marcus Chen noticed the whiskey bottles appearing in his office trash. Only Victoria saw the way Ethan stared at Sophie's empty desk before having it removed. "You're better off," Victoria said one evening. "Standing too close. She would have dragged you down." Ethan didn't respond, poured another drink. The Tokyo deal fell through. The translator they'd hired couldn't read the room, mistranslated a crucial cultural nuance. 3 months of work, $20 million, gone. Sophie would have caught that, Marcus muttered to himself, reviewing the failed negotiation transcripts. He'd never stopped believing in her innocence. Couldn't reconcile the woman who'd helped him with the profile Victoria had painted, so he dug. Late nights in the server room, Marcus traced digital footprints like a bloodhound. The emails that had destroyed Sophie showed timestamp inconsistencies, milliseconds off, patterns suggesting remote access. He found Victoria's credentials logged during off hours, found deleted security footage, found the crack in the perfect frame. Liam Barrett, now 6, asked his father one morning over breakfast, "When is Sophie coming back?" David Barrett, Blake Tech's VP of Operations, paused mid-coffee. "Sophie doesn't work there anymore, buddy." "Why not?" "Grown-up stuff, complicated. Did she do something bad?" David hesitated. He'd never quite believed the official story, had watched Sophie work, seen her integrity firsthand. "I don't think so, Liam. Sometimes good people get blamed for things they didn't do. Then someone should fix it." From the mouths of children. Grace was fired in April. The official reason was restructuring. Everyone knew better. She found work at Mount Sinai Hospital, night shift, cleaning surgical wards. The pay was less, the hours harder. But she didn't complain, just lit more candles at church, prayed harder. "Mama, this is my fault." Sophie helped her mother prepare for the night shift, packing leftovers in Tupperware. "You lost your job because of me." "I lost a job." "You lost something bigger." Grace cupped Sophie's face. "But we both still breathing, we both still here. That means God ain't done with our story. What if I'm done with his story?" "Then you wait." He's patient like that. Victoria's panic attack started in May. She'd wake at 3 a.m., hyperventilating, Dante's face haunting her, not with guilt, but with fear of discovery. She'd framed an innocent woman, destroyed a life, and the weight was pressing down like stones. She considered confessing, typed the email a dozen times, but pride, that vicious, hungry thing, stopped her every time. Delete, delete, delete. Marcus Chen finally had enough evidence in June. He requested a private meeting with Ethan, marked urgent. They met at 7 a.m., before the office filled with witnesses. "Sir, I need to show you something about Sophie Miller." Ethan's jaw tightened at her name. "Marcus, that case is closed." "No, sir, it's not. It's a lie, and I can prove it." For the next 40 minutes, Marcus presented his findings, server logs, timestamp analysis, Victoria's access records. The impossibility of Sophie being in 2 places simultaneously. Ethan watched, face draining color, hands beginning to shake. "Why are you showing me this?" His voice was barely audible. "Because justice matters, and because I've worked here 5 years, and I've never seen you look at anyone the way you looked at her." Ethan stood abruptly, crossing to the window. Manhattan sprawled below, indifferent and glittering. "I destroyed her." Not a question, a verdict. "Yes, sir, you did." "How do I fix this?" "I don't know if you can." Ethan turned, eyes red-rimmed. "Find her. I don't care what it costs. Find Sophie Miller." It took Marcus 3 days. Sophie had vanished from digital footprints. No social media, no email responses, but he remembered she'd mentioned volunteering, and Manhattan's community centers were finite. He found her at the Bronx Community Center, teaching a Tuesday morning class. Through the window he watched her smile, smaller now, more guarded, but still there. Marcus didn't interrupt, just sent Ethan the address. Ethan drove to the Bronx in his Mercedes. Absurdly out of place among bodegas and chain-link fences, the community center was painted cheerful yellow, peeling at corners, graffiti spelling hope in Spanish and English. He waited until Sophie's class ended, watched through dusty windows as she laughed with students, patient and present, the woman he'd destroyed, teaching herself to live again. When she finally emerged, carrying a worn tote bag, she saw him immediately, froze. Sophie. She stood 15 feet away, separated by cracked sidewalk and 3 months of silence. "What are you doing here?" "I found the truth. Victoria framed you. I have evidence, proof, everything. You're innocent. You were always innocent." Sophie stared at him like he was speaking a language she'd forgotten. "Congratulations." "Sophie, please, I know I hurt you. I know I failed you. But I want to make it right. Come back to Blake Tech, triple salary, your own department, I'll—" "Stop!" Her voice was flat, empty. "Just stop!" Ethan stepped forward. She stepped back. "I don't want your money. I don't want your apologies. Do you know what I want, Ethan?" He shook his head, desperate. "I want someone who believed in me, without needing proof. Someone who knew me well enough to know betrayal wasn't in my DNA. But you chose paperwork over people. You chose safety over me. I was scared. Of what? Of how real you were. Of how much you made me feel." His voice cracked. "I've built empires, Sophie. I've never built trust. So when the evidence said one thing and my heart said another, You chose the evidence, and that tells me everything about who you are. Then let me show you who I can become." Sophie turned away, tears finally breaking free. "Some things break in ways that can't be fixed, Ethan. We're one of them." She walked into the community center, leaving him standing on broken pavement, Mercedes gleaming like a tombstone behind him. That night, Ethan Blake sat in his office until dawn. Marcus's evidence spread across his desk, Victoria's betrayal clear as sunlight. He called her at 6 a.m. "My office now." When Victoria arrived, confident smile ready, she saw his face and knew, "Ethan, you framed her. Not a question, an execution. You destroyed an innocent woman because you wanted me." Victoria's composure shattered. "I love you. I've loved you for 6 years, and she just appeared and took everything I built. She didn't take anything. She earned it, and you took it from her." Ethan stood, voice colder than Victoria had ever heard. "You're fired. Security will escort you out. If you contest this, I release every bite of evidence Marcus found. You'll never work in this city again." "Ethan, please, get out." 2 security guards appeared. Victoria was walked through the office she'd commanded for 6 years, executives averting eyes, the same humiliation Sophie had endured. At the elevator, she turned back. "You'll never get her back. You know that, right? You destroyed what you had." "I know." Ethan met her eyes, no mercy remaining. "But at least I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve her forgiveness. What will you spend yours doing?" The elevator doors closed on Victoria's crumbling face. Ethan returned to his office, opened his laptop, and began to write. Not an email, not a document, but a letter, by hand. The first he'd written since childhood. "Dear Sophie." Outside, Manhattan woke to another day of transactions and ambitions. But inside, Ethan Blake, something fundamental had shifted. He'd spent his life building empires. Now he would spend it rebuilding a bridge to one extraordinary woman, even if she never crossed it again. The letter arrived on a Thursday, delivered by Grace Miller with trembling hands and glistening eyes. "Baby, you need to read this." Sophie sat cross-legged on her worn couch, suspicion immediate. "If it's from him, just read it. Please." The envelope was cream cardstock, her name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Careful, unpracticed, as if each letter had been considered. Sophie opened it slowly, armor already rising. "Dear Sophie, I've been learning French these past months, not in libraries like you, but with expensive tutors, trying to understand what you felt studying alone, while the world said you had no value. I learned that fluency isn't mastering vocabulary. It's having courage to speak even when afraid of mistakes. And I failed you, not because I couldn't translate your fake emails, but because I couldn't translate your heart when it was screaming truth. I'm not asking you to return to me or the company. I'm asking for a chance to show you I finally learned the hardest language of all, humility. I'll be at Washington Square Park on the bench where your mother told me you used to read at 15 every Sunday, 3 p.m. for as many Sundays as necessary. If you come, I'll know there's hope. If you don't, I'll understand and keep trying to become worthy of the lesson you taught me. With love, I finally learned to recognize Ethan." Sophie read it 3 times, felt something crack in her chest, not breaking open, but starting to, "I can't, Mama. I'm not saying you should, just don't say never." That first Sunday, Sophie stayed home, helped Maria with her citizenship application, taught verb conjugations. pretended not to notice the clock hitting 3, then 4, then 5. Grace returned from church with information she hadn't asked for. I walked through Washington Square, saw a man on a bench, reading in French, looking lost. "Mama, I'm just saying what I saw." The second Sunday, Sophie told herself she wasn't curious, wasn't wondering if he'd actually returned, spent the day cleaning her apartment, reorganizing books, doing anything to avoid thinking about him. The third Sunday, she walked past the park, just passing, just coincidence, saw him from a distance. Ethan Blake in jeans and a sweater, looking almost human, reading Le Petit Prince with a dictionary beside him. She kept walking, but slower. The fourth Sunday brought rain, Manhattan's particular brand of cold, vindictive rain that soaked through everything. Sophie stayed inside, watching water streak windows, telling herself she wasn't concerned. Grace came home drenched from church. He was there, soaking wet, still reading. That's stupid. He could get sick. Or he's showing he means it. The fifth Sunday. Sophie went. She didn't plan to. Woke up, made coffee, taught an early class, then found herself on the subway heading downtown, telling herself she was just walking, just existing in the same city. Washington Square Park smelled like rain-washed concrete and vendor pretzels. Street musicians played off-key violin. NYU students sprawled on grass, pretending summer would last forever. Ethan sat on the bench, L'étranger open in his lap, looking up every 30 seconds, like a child waiting for a parent who might not return. Sophie approached slowly, each step requiring courage she had to rebuild with every heartbeat. He saw her, stood abruptly, book falling, hands uncertain. "You came. I'm still angry." Her first words, armor still raised. "I know. You destroyed me in ways I didn't know were possible. I know. And you think showing up with a French novel fixes that? No. I think showing up for the next decade might start to..." They stood 5 feet apart, the distance feeling like continents. Sophie sat, not beside him, but on the opposite end of the bench. Ethan sat again, giving her space. "Why are you doing this?" She stared straight ahead, refusing to look at him. "Because you taught me something." "What?" "That wealth isn't what you have in your bank account. It's what you can give without expecting anything back." He turned toward her, and she felt the weight of his gaze. "And the only thing I want to give now is a version of myself that deserves to breathe the same air as you." Sophie finally looked at him. He looked different, thinner, older somehow, eyes carrying weight they hadn't before. "I don't need you to be perfect, Ethan. I needed you to believe in me." "I did. I just believed in fear more." His voice broke slightly. "I've spent my whole life in control, building empires, making decisions, never uncertain. And then you appeared, and suddenly I felt things I couldn't control, couldn't predict, couldn't manage. So when I had to choose between feeling everything or trusting nothing, You chose nothing." "Yes." A street musician started playing La Vie en Rose on accordion. Sophie almost laughed at the universe's lack of subtlety. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "Nothing. I want to give you something." "What?" "Time as much as you need, proof through actions, not words, a chance to show you I learned." He paused. "And maybe, if I'm incredibly lucky, in friendship just that, just the privilege of knowing you again." Sophie felt tears building, but refused to let them fall. "You really hurt me. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life wishing I could take that back." Ethan's hands clenched. "But since I can't, I'll spend it trying to earn your forgiveness. I'm not sure I can forgive you. Then I'll wait until you can, or until I die trying." Sophie stood. Ethan's face fell, thinking she was leaving forever. "Next Sunday, 3 p.m., we try this again." She looked down at him. "But understand something. I'm not the woman who walked into that conference room. That woman died. I don't know who I am now, but I'm not her. I don't want her back. I want to know who you became." Sophie nodded once, then walked away before she could change her mind. Behind her, Ethan Blake exhaled for what felt like the first time in months, in the Bronx that night. Sophie told Maria about the encounter. "So you gave him chance." I gave him one Sunday. That's not a chance. I don't know what that is. Maria smiled, stirring rice for her family's dinner. That's hope, Misha. Hope is always start. In Manhattan, Marcus Chen found Ethan still at Washington Square, grinning like a fool. She came. And next Sunday she's giving me next Sunday. Marcus clapped his friend's shoulder. Don't fuck this up. I won't, I can't. I literally cannot survive fucking this up again. That week, Ethan did something he'd never done before. He asked for help. He called the community center where Sophie volunteered, spoke to the director, offered funding, not in Sophie's name, she'd hate that, but anonymous, enough to pay the teachers, buy supplies, keep the lights on. He established the Sophie Miller Scholarship Program, full rides for low-income students studying languages. First recipient, a girl from Queens who studied French in her school library. He reintegrated Grace Miller, not just rehired, but promoted, gave her health care, pension, respect, made it clear anyone who treated her poorly answered to him personally. He changed Blake Tech's hiring practices, removing degree requirements for demonstrable skill, creating pathways for people like Sophie, the invisible becoming visible. Each action he did quietly, not for recognition. For penance, the second Sunday, Sophie arrived 15 minutes early, found Ethan already there, 2 coffees waiting, one with excessive sugar, exactly how she liked it. You remembered. I remember everything about you. They talked for 2 hours. About books, languages, the weight of invisibility, the cost of being seen. They disagreed about the stranger, laughed about mistranslations, existed together without the weight of Blake Tech between them. When Sophie left, Ethan didn't ask for more, just said, "Thank you for the time. Don't waste it proving something, just be honest." "I will. I am. I'm terrified I'll mess this up." Sophie almost smiled. "Good. Fear means you care." The third Sunday brought Maria's daughter, little Rosa, who'd been begging to meet the man Miss Sophie talks about. Rosa marched up to Ethan, 6 years old and fearless. "Oh, you mean to Miss Sophie?" I'm trying not to be anymore." "Good. She cries sometimes. I hear her when Mummy visits." Sophie blushed, mortified, but Ethan's face crumpled. "I'm sorry for making her cry." Rosa studied him seriously, then nodded. "Okay, you can stay." She ran off to chase pigeons. Sophie and Ethan sat in silence, that confession hanging between them. "I didn't want you to know that," Sophie finally said. "Why not?" "Because it gives you power. Knowing you still affect me. Sophie, you demolished me. You think you're the only one who cried." She looked at him then, really looked, and saw it. The cracks in his perfect facade, the humanity bleeding through. Tell me about it, the crying." So he did, told her about the whiskey bottles, the nightmares, the way he saw her ghost in every corner of his office, told her about firing Victoria, about Marcus's evidence, about the moment he realized he'd destroyed the only real thing in his life. Sophie listened, and something in her softened. Not forgiveness yet, but the possibility of it, as sunset painted Washington Square in gold and amber. Sophie made a decision. Next Sunday, bring lunch, real lunch, not expensive, something that tastes like memories. Ethan's smile could have lit the city. "I can do that." Sophie stood to leave, then paused. "Ethan, yeah, I'm glad you kept coming even when I didn't." She left him there, hope blooming in her chest like something dangerous and necessary. Summer arrived in Manhattan with the vengeance of concrete trapped heat. Sophie and Ethan's Sundays became ritual. 3 p.m., Washington Square Park. Shared food and careful conversation. Rebuilding trust like constructing a cathedral brick by cautious brick. The 8th Sunday. Ethan brought bodega sandwiches. Not expensive artisan, but the corner store kind that tasted like Sophie's childhood. "How did you know?" "I asked your mother." He smiled sheepishly. "She gave me very specific instructions. Ham, Swiss, mustard, pickles on regular bread, said it was your comfort food growing up." Sophie bit into it, flavor unleashing memory, Grace counting pennies to afford lunch, Sophie eating half so her mother could have the rest. The metallic taste of sacrifice. This is perfect. They ate in comfortable silence, watching street performers juggle fire, students sprawl, studying, life happening around them. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan ventured. "Maybe. What are you doing, really? Not at the community center, but with your life? What do you want?" Sophie considered this. Weeks ago, she'd have said nothing, wanted nothing, dreamed nothing. But something had shifted. "I want to build something, a school maybe, for people like me who learned languages in libraries because classrooms weren't available. Free education, real certifications, actual pathways," she paused. "But that's a fantasy, costs money I'll never have. What if you had funding?" "I'd say no." She looked at him seriously. "I know what you're thinking, and I appreciate it. But I can't accept your money. I need to do this myself, or not at all. What if it wasn't mine? What if investors believed in the model?" "Ethan, I'm not offering. I'm asking a hypothetical. If the resources existed, would you do it?" Sophie thought about Maria, about Rosa, about every immigrant mother trying to give her children more. "Yes," in a heartbeat. "Then let me help, not with money, with connections. Introductions to education foundations, grant writers, people who fund these things. You do the work, I just open doors." Sophie wanted to say no, wanted to maintain independence, but something in his offer felt different. Not rescue, but respect. "Okay, but I lead. You follow. Deal." The 13th Sunday, Sophie brought him to the Bronx. "You want to understand me, you need to see where I'm from." They walked streets Ethan had only seen from car windows. He passed bodegas where owners knew Sophie by name, past the library where Mr. Owens still worked, waving when he spotted her, past the diner where she'd served coffee and dreamed in French. "This is Mike's." Sophie stopped outside. "I worked here 4 years. Mike gave me free food when Mom couldn't afford groceries, taught me that kindness isn't about money, it's about showing up." Inside, Mike was older, grayer, still commanding his domain from behind the counter. "Sophie Miller!" He rounded the counter, hugging her fiercely. "Where the hell you been?" "Around, living," Sophie gestured to Ethan. "Mike, this is a friend, Ethan." Mike sized Ethan up with practiced skepticism. "Are you the one who hurt her?" Ethan didn't flinch. "Yes, sir. You gonna hurt her again?" "Not if I can help it," Mike grunted, returning to his grill. "Coffee's on the house, but you fuck up again, I know where you work." They sat in a corner booth, vinyl seats patched with duct tape, drinking coffee that tasted like gasoline and nostalgia. "This is what real looks like," Sophie said quietly. "Not glass towers, not marble lobbies. This, people who see each other. I want to see you." "Really see you?" Ethan reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. "Teach me how." "You start by understanding privilege isn't bad. It's just a tool. The question is what you build with it. What should I build? Something that matters more than profit." That conversation sparked something. Ethan spent the next weeks working quietly, using his network not for deals, but for good, connected Sophie with grant foundations, introduced her to education reformers, opened doors she'd been locked out of. Sophie wrote proposals late into nights, Grace proofreading, Mariah contributing ideas. The Miller Language Institute began as words on paper, but Sophie could feel it taking shape, something real. Something hers. Blake Tech changed too. Ethan implemented policies Sophie had once suggested, promoting from within, removing barriers, valuing skill over credentials, the invisible becoming seen. Marcus Chen was promoted to Chief of Operations. Liam's father, David, became VP of Inclusive Hiring. The culture shifted, grudgingly at first, then genuinely. One evening, Ethan texted Sophie a photo. The first Miller Institute scholarship recipient, a 19-year-old from the Bronx named Jasmine, holding her acceptance letter to translation program. Sophie stared at the image, tears blurring it. Grace found her crying in the kitchen. Bad tears or good tears? I don't know anymore, both. That's healing, baby. It always hurts and hopes at the same time. The 20th Sunday marked 5 months. Sophie arrived to find Ethan different, nervous, fidgeting, the confidence that usually armored him stripped away. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I need to tell you something." Sophie's stomach dropped. "If this is where you say you can't do this anymore, I'm in love with you." The words exploded out. "I've been in love with you since you stood in that conference room with a bucket and offered to save my ass. I was in love with you when I fired you. I've been in love with you every Sunday, every conversation, every moment, and I know I don't deserve you. I know I broke us maybe beyond repair, but I needed you to know. Not because I expect anything back, but because honesty matters. You taught me that." Silence stretched between them like a held breath. Sophie stood abruptly. "Walk with me." They walked through Greenwich Village, through streets narrowing like secrets. Sophie led him to a small bookstore she'd discovered, dusty and perfect. "I came here after you fired me, sat in the back reading Camus, trying to understand how people betray each other." She pulled a book from the shelf, The Fall. "Found my answer: people betray because they're scared of being real, scared that if someone really sees them, they'll be found lacking." She turned to Ethan. "I see you, the real you, ambitious, broken, trying, and I'm still scared that you'll wake up one day and realize I'm not enough for your world. You're not enough for my world. You're too good for it." Ethan moved closer. "Sophie, I'm not asking you to love me back. I'm not asking for anything except permission to keep showing up, to keep proving I'm more than my worst moment." Sophie's armor finally cracked. "I'm not ready to love you yet. The trust is still broken. I know, but I want to try. To see if we can build something new from the wreckage. That's more than I hoped for." Sophie stepped closer, close enough to feel his heat. "Kiss me." Not like before. No champagne, no gala, no performance. Just real. Ethan cupped her face with shaking hands, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Real is terrifying." "Good. We should both be terrified." He kissed her softly, reverently, like she was something precious he'd broken and been given impossible chance to hold again. Sophie kissed back, tasting coffee and hope and the bittersweet flavor of second chances when they broke apart, both breathless. Sophie smiled. Small, fragile but genuine. "One day at a time, that's all I can promise. One day at a time is everything." They walked back through Manhattan holding hands. The city, glittering around them like possibility in Queens. Grace lit candles in gratitude. In the Bronx, Maria told Rosa that Miss Sophie was smiling again, and in Washington Square Park, where it all rebuilt. A street musician played Debussy while lovers slow danced under darkening sky, believing in beautiful, impossible things. 6 months of Sundays became routine, became foundation, became something stronger than what had broken. Sophie and Ethan rebuilt their relationship through small actions. Coffee dates in Queens, walks through Brooklyn, evenings where he helped her write grant proposals and she taught him Portuguese. Trust reconstructed slowly, tested constantly, earned through consistency. The Miller Language Institute opened its doors on a crisp October morning in a renovated warehouse in the Bronx. Sophie stood outside. Staring at the sign bearing her name, unable to breathe, Grace squeezed her hand. "Your daddy's watching, baby, so proud." Inside, 30 students waited. Immigrants, single mothers, high school dropouts. All hungry for the chance Sophie fought to give them. First-day curriculum, French basics, taught by a woman who'd learned in library corners. Ethan sat in the back row, observing, not interfering. Watching Sophie command the room with natural authority, making everyone feel seen. When she noticed him, she smiled. That smile that had haunted him for years. After class, he helped her reorganize chairs. "You were incredible. I was terrified, still am." Sophie leaned against a desk. "What if I fail them? You won't. You know why? Why? Because you've already walked their path. You know every obstacle. Every moment they'll want to quit, and you'll meet them there." Sophie kissed him, sudden and grateful. "Thank you for believing in this. In me. Always. Even when I temporarily lost my mind. We don't talk about those months." Deal. November brought the scholarship program's first graduation. 15 students completed certification, qualified for professional translation work. Sophie watched them walk across the makeshift stage in the community center, tears streaming freely. Jasmine, the first recipient, paused at the podium. Miss Sophie told me something when I wanted to quit. She said, "The world will try to make you invisible. Your job is to refuse." I refused. And now I have a job translating for the UN. Because one woman refused first and taught me how. The applause was deafening. Grace sobbed. Maria cheered. Ethan recorded everything on his phone, pride radiating from him. Afterward, at a tiny celebration in Sophie's apartment, Ethan helped Grace with dishes, while Sophie collapsed on her couch. "You good, baby?" Grace called from the kitchen. "I'm perfect, Mama." Ethan dried plates beside Grace, the domestic intimacy still new and tentatively precious. "You love my daughter," Grace's statement, not question, "more than I knew possible. You broke her. I know. You planning to do it again?" Ethan set down the dish towel, meeting Grace's eyes. "Ma'am, I plan to spend every day proving I won't. But I understand if you never fully trust me." Grace studied him, really studied him, the way only mothers can. "My husband died when Sophie was 3. Fell from scaffolding because his boss cut corners. Rich man got richer, my husband got dead." She paused, hands stilling in soapy water. "I thought all wealthy people were like that. Maybe I was wrong. Some are. I was, but your daughter taught me better." Grace nodded slowly. "Don't make me regret believing in you." December arrived with unexpected snow. Sophie received a call from Monsieur Beaumont, the French investor from that first meeting that felt like a lifetime ago. "Mademoiselle Miller, I heard about your institute, Magnifique. I would like to fund an exchange program. Your students studying in Paris, French students coming to New York. We build bridges, yes." Sophie nearly dropped the phone. "Are you serious?" "Completely. You changed my perspective that day, showed me that talent exists everywhere. If we bother to look, now I look, and I fund what I find," she told Ethan that night over Thai takeout in her apartment, barely coherent with excitement. "Paris, Ethan, my students going to Paris. You should go too, visit the exchange, see the program in action." Sophie's excitement dimmed slightly. "I can't afford." "The Institute can. It's a business expense." He held up a hand before she could protest. "Not charity, actual expense. Directors of education programs visit their international partnerships. That's you." Sophie threw a spring roll at him. Laughing, "You're insufferable. You love me anyway." The words landed accidentally, suddenly serious. They'd been dating, if Sunday park walks and language lessons counted as dating, for months, but hadn't used that word, love. It hung between them like a question. "I might," Sophie said softly, "be starting to love you." Ethan set down his chopsticks, full attention on her. "You might." "Okay, fine, I do. I love you." "You impossible man, happy?" Deliriously, he kissed her, tasting pad thai and second chances, and Sophie realized something. She wasn't scared anymore. The fear that had armored her since that terrible conference room had melted away, replaced by something stronger. Certainty. Christmas Eve, Grace hosted dinner in her new apartment. Modest but comfortable. Purchased with her promotion salary, the table crowded with Maria and her family. Marcus Chen, even Mike from the diner, Ethan, still awkward in casual settings, helped serve rice and learned Portuguese toasts. "To family," Grace raised her glass. "The one we're born into and the one we choose. To second chances," Sophie added. Eyes finding Ethan's. "To women who teach men how to be human," Ethan finished, making everyone laugh. Later, after guests left and Grace dozed on the couch, Sophie and Ethan stood on the small balcony overlooking Queens. Snow fell soft and silent, the city muted under white. "I have something for you." Ethan pulled a small box from his coat. Sophie's heart stopped. "Ethan, it's not that yet one day, if you'll have me. But not yet. I know we're still rebuilding." He opened the box, revealing a delicate necklace, a small pendant shaped like an open book. "It's beautiful." Read the inscription. Sophie tilted it toward the light. Engraved in tiny script, "Les livres ne jugent pas d'où vous venez." Books don't judge where you come from. You remembered. Her voice broke. "I remember everything you ever said, every moment, every word." He fastened the necklace around her throat, hands gentle. "You taught me that value isn't about where you start, it's about who you become." Sophie turned in his arms, snow catching in her short hair, making her look ethereal. "Who did you become?" "Someone who finally understands that the best things in life aren't built, they're grown. Slowly, carefully, with someone who makes you want to be better. That's surprisingly poetic for a businessman." "You're a terrible influence," Sophie laughed, kissing him with snow melting between them. Inside, Grace watched through the window, hand over her heart, thanking God and her dead husband for protecting their daughter through fire and bringing her home. New Year's Eve, Blake Tech hosted its annual gala, but different this year. Half the invitations went to Miller Institute students and their families. Half the menu was catered by the Bronx restaurant Sophie loved. Formal wear was optional. Ethan stood at the entrance, greeting immigrants and CEOs with equal respect, the man he'd been a year ago, barely recognizable in the man he'd become. Sophie arrived in the same navy dress from that first gala, the one she'd burned and then replaced. Same store, same style, a reminder of who she'd been and who she was now. "You came back to the scene of the crime," Ethan murmured, offering his arm. "Reclaiming it, there's a difference." They danced, this time surrounded by friends, by people who'd fought beside them, by proof that second chances existed. Liam, now 7, cut in. "Miss Sophie, my dad says you and Mr. Blake are going to get married." Sophie nearly choked. "Does he now?" "Yep. He says, Mr. Blake looks at you like you're magic." Sophie glanced at Ethan across the room, talking with Jasmine about her own position, his face animated and genuine. "Maybe he does," she admitted to Liam. "Good, 'cause you look at him like he's magic, too." Out of the mouths of children, as midnight approached, Ethan pulled Sophie onto the balcony, the same one where they'd almost kissed a year ago before everything shattered. "Poetic bringing me here. I'm reclaiming it too." He took both her hands. "Sophie, this year you gave me something I didn't deserve. Forgiveness, trust, another chance, and I want to promise you something." "What?" "That every year forward, I'll earn you, I'll choose you, I'll show up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's all I ever wanted, someone who stays. I'm staying for whatever forever you'll give me." The countdown began inside. 10, 9, 8. "I love you," Sophie said, completely, terrifyingly. "Really, I love you," Ethan replied. "More than empire, more than wealth, more than anything I built before I met you." 3, 2, 1. They kissed as Manhattan exploded in celebration, as champagne corks popped, as the city screamed joy into winter night. And somewhere in the crowd, Grace, Marcus, Maria, and Mike watched their two disasters finally figure out what everyone else had known all along. They'd been meant for each other from the moment she'd offered to translate, and he'd been brave enough to say yes. Spring arrived with the kind of sunshine that promised redemption. Sophie Miller stood at the front of a Blake Tech auditorium, facing 300 people, Miller Institute students, their families, company executives, press. The first graduating class of the exchange program was receiving diplomas today. She wore a simple dress, her mother's gold cross at her throat beside Ethan's book pendant. Her hands shook slightly, gripping the podium, but her voice held steady. "A year ago, I stood in a different room in this building. I was accused of something I didn't do, judged before I could defend myself, dismissed by people who never really saw me." She paused, finding Ethan in the front row. "That day broke me. But breaking isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's renovation. Sometimes we have to shatter to rebuild stronger." Grace dabbed her eyes in the audience. Maria squeezed her hand. "These students you see graduating today, they were broken too, invisible, told they didn't matter because they came from the wrong neighborhoods, spoke with the wrong accents, had the wrong credentials." Sophie's voice strengthened. "But they refused invisibility. They studied, they persevered, and now they're walking proof that talent doesn't require permission." The audience erupted in applause. 15 students crossed the stage, each receiving certificates and job offers, real careers, real futures, real validation. When the last student finished, Sophie prepared to conclude, but Ethan rose. Approaching the stage, "What are you doing?" Sophie whispered into the microphone, confused. "Something I should have done a year ago." He took the microphone, addressing the crowd. "Many of you know Sophie Miller as the director of the Miller Institute. Some know her as the woman who saved a crucial business deal when I was desperate, but I know her as something else, the person who saved me." Sophie's breath caught. "A year ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I doubted someone extraordinary because I was too coward to trust what my heart knew. Sophie Miller taught me that real power isn't controlling outcomes. It's having courage to believe in people." He turned to face her fully. "She taught me that leadership means serving, that wealth means giving, that love means showing up, especially when it's terrifying." The auditorium fell silent, 300 people holding collective breath. Ethan knelt. "Oh my God," Sophie breathed. "Sophie, I don't deserve you. I probably never will, but I promise to spend every day trying." He pulled a small velvet box from his jacket. "You've already said yes to building a life beside me. Will you say yes to building it with me, officially, legally, permanently?" Sophie stared at the ring, simple, elegant, a sapphire the color of midnight conversations and rebuilt trust. "You're proposing in front of 300 people. I'm proposing in front of everyone who matters. Your students, your mother, your friends, witnesses to hold me accountable if I ever forget how lucky I am." Tears streamed down Sophie's face, mascara probably ruining, not caring. "Stand up." Ethan obeyed. Uncertain, Sophie took his face in both hands. "You had to fall to learn how to see. I had to break to understand my strength. So yes, Ethan Blake, I'll marry you, not because you changed for me, but because you changed for yourself. And that man I can love forever." He slid the ring onto her finger, kissed her while the auditorium exploded in cheers. Grace sobbed. Liam shouted, "I told you!" Marcus whistled. Maria blessed herself in Spanish. The celebration continued late into evening. Blake Tech transformed into party space, catering from Bronx restaurants, music from Sophie's neighborhood, wealth and humility finally mixing. Grace found Ethan in a quiet corner, bringing him water. "You did good, son." The word son landed like benediction. "I'm going to take care of her, I promise." "I know you will, but let her take care of you too. That's what partnership means." "Yes, Mom," Grace smiled, patting his cheek. "Welcome to the family, and boy, you better get used to Portuguese at holidays." Later, Sophie and Ethan escaped to the roof, 42 floors up, Manhattan spreading infinite below them. "I can't believe you proposed in front of everyone. Would you have preferred private?" Sophie considered this. "Actually, no. Having witnesses matters. Reminds us we're not just promising each other. We're promising our community." "When did you become so wise?" "Around the time I started loving you." She leaned into his side. "What's next for us? What do you want?" "Everything. Kids who grow up knowing people matter more than money, a home where friends from all worlds feel welcome, a life where we build things that outlast us." "I can do that. Promise." "Promise." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city breathe. Ethan, thank you." "For what?" "For coming back to that park every Sunday, for learning French, for becoming someone I could trust again. Thank you for letting me, for giving me chance after chance when you had every right to walk away. I almost did. What stopped you?" Sophie thought back to that 5th Sunday, standing in rain, watching him wait. "I realized something. You weren't waiting for forgiveness. You were earning it. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Waiting is passive. Earning is active. You showed up, changed policies, funded dreams, became better. You did the work before asking for the reward. Isn't that just what people should do?" "Yes, but most don't. You did. That's why I'm here." 5 years later, Sophie Miller Blake stood in a Paris cafe, watching her students navigate French conversation with native speakers. The exchange program had grown exponentially. now operating in 6 countries, providing pathways for hundreds of young people annually. Her phone buzzed, text from Ethan, who was home with their twins. Emma just said bonjour to the mailman. Daniel tried to negotiate extra cookies in French. Your influence is terrifying, Sophie laughed. Typing back, that's what you get for marrying a linguist. Best decision I ever made. Second best, first was letting me translate that day. Fair point. Love you, see you tonight, love you too. Grace had retired at 60, living comfortably in her own house, small but hers, purchased with money she'd earned and saved. She babysat the twins every Thursday, teaching them Portuguese nursery rhymes and the value of hard work. Victoria Hale, after 2 years of therapy and genuine soul-searching, had written Sophie a letter. I destroyed you because I was empty. I thought if I eliminated competition, I'd win. But there was nothing to win, except my own isolation. I'm sorry, not because I expect forgiveness, but because you deserve to hear it. What I did was unforgivable, and you are extraordinary. Sophie had written back simply, thank you for the honesty. I hope you found peace. Sometimes forgiveness wasn't about reconciliation. It was about releasing poison. Marcus Chen was now Blake Tech's CEO. Ethan had stepped back to focus on philanthropy, using his wealth to open doors for others the way Sophie had taught him. Liam Barrett, now 12, had started learning Mandarin at the Miller Institute. Miss Sophie says knowing languages helps you see different worlds, he'd explained to his parents. The institute itself had expanded, 3 locations across New York, partnership with community colleges, full accreditation. Sophie directed everything with the same energy she'd once used to mop floors, except now she built futures instead of cleaning them. On their 5th anniversary, Ethan took Sophie back to Washington Square Park. They sat on their bench. The city had installed a small plaque, where second chances begin. You know what I love about us? Ethan asked. What? We're not a fairy tale. We're real, messy, complicated, rebuilt from ruins, but we chose each other anyway. Fairy tales are boring. Real is better. Real is terrifying. That's why it matters. They watched street performers. Students, lovers, dreamers, all the beautiful chaos of human existence. Regret anything, Sophie asked. Every moment I didn't believe in you, but I'm grateful for it too. How can you be grateful for that? Because it taught me that love isn't just feeling, it's choosing. Every day choosing, and I choose you, Sophie, every single time. She kissed him, tasting coffee and partnership and 5 years of daily choice. Emma and Daniel were 8 now, bilingual troublemakers who played with CEOs' kids and janitors' kids without distinction. They'd never know a world where people were invisible based on zip codes. Sophie made sure of that. At the twins' school play, Sophie sat between Grace and Ethan, watching Emma confidently deliver lines in 3 languages while Daniel provided dramatic gestures. Your daddy would be so proud, Grace whispered. He'd be confused how his daughter, who couldn't afford books, now funds libraries. Sophie whispered back. That's the point of generations, baby. We climb so our children can fly. The play ended. The family walked home through Queens. Yes, Queens, where Sophie had insisted they live, despite Ethan's ability to afford Manhattan penthouses. Our kids need to understand where we came from, she'd argued. Privilege without perspective creates monsters. Now Emma and Daniel played in neighborhood streets, learning Spanish from Maria's grandkids, learning resilience from sidewalk basketball, learning that community mattered more than square footage. That night, after bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, Sophie found Ethan on their modest balcony. Penny for your thoughts. Just thinking about that first day when you stood in that conference room with a bucket, offering to save my ass. Best, worst decision I ever made. Why worst? Because it broke me, made me think I could belong in your world. And now I know I don't belong in your world. You belong in mine. There's a difference. Ethan pulled her close, breathing in her jasmine shampoo. We built our own world, one where neither of us has to be invisible. That's poetic for a businessman. You're a terrible influence, Sophie laughed, the sound echoing into Queen's night. 10 years after that first meeting, the Miller Institute hosted its 100th graduation. Former students had become diplomats, translators, teachers, activists. They'd changed policy, built bridges, opened doors. Sophie, now 43 with grey threading through her brown hair, stood before the crowd. When I started this institute, people asked what I hoped to achieve. I said I wanted to make the invisible seen, she paused. But I was wrong. These students were never invisible. We just weren't looking. My job wasn't making them seen. It was making sure they had platforms to be impossible to ignore. Thunderous applause. So to this graduating class, you don't need permission to be brilliant. You don't need credentials to have value. You need courage. And you've already proven you have that just by being here. Afterward, an elderly Mr. Owens, the librarian who'd encouraged teenage Sophie, approached. You did it, kiddo. Everything I knew you would. I almost gave up so many times. But you didn't. That's what matters. Sophie hugged him. This man who'd seen her when she was invisible that night, the Blake Miller family, Grace, Sophie, Ethan, Emma, Daniel, Maria and her family, Marcus, Mike and dozens more gathered in the Bronx apartment complex courtyard for summer barbecue. Ethan manned the grill, taking orders in Portuguese, while Emma and Daniel played soccer with neighborhood kids. Grace told stories. Maria sang. The city lived around them, vibrant and real. Sophie watched her family, chosen and given, and felt complete. Ethan found her, handing her a beer. What are you thinking about? About how that conference room felt like ending, but it was really beginning. Best, worst thing that happened to us. Exactly. They clinked bottles. Drinking cheap beer under Queen stars. I love you, Sophie said. For staying when it was hard, for changing, for showing our kids that messing up doesn't define you, how you rebuild does. I love you for teaching me that, and for every Sunday in Washington Square, and for saying yes, even when I didn't deserve it. You earned it, Ethan. That's the difference. Years continued passing. Emma went to college, then Daniel. Both studied international relations, carrying forward their mother's legacy. They returned summers to teach at the Institute, ensuring the cycle continued. Grace passed peacefully at 85. Surrounded by family. Her last words, I knew you'd fly, baby, I always knew. Sophie scattered her mother's ashes in Washington Square Park, where second chances began. At 70, Sophie retired from active direction, passing the Institute to former student Jasmine, but she still visited weekly, still taught classes, still believed in impossible kids from invisible neighborhoods. Ethan, now 75, had given away most of his fortune, funding education. Housing, healthcare, Blake Tech operated as a benefit corporation, profits supporting communities. They sat on their bench, the plaque now weathered but still readable, watching another generation of lovers, dreamers and believers. Any regrets? Sophie asked, her hand in his, fingers intertwined like they'd been for 50 years. Just one. What? That I wasted even a day without you. Sophie leaned her head on his shoulder. We made up for it. We did. Manhattan glittered before them, millions of stories unfolding simultaneously. People falling in love, people building dreams, people choosing courage over comfort. Ethan, thank you for that first yes, for letting me translate. Thank you for that first courage, for offering when everyone said you shouldn't. We were both brave that day. We've been brave ever since, as sunset painted the sky gold and amber. Sophie Miller Blake closed her eyes, feeling the weight of a life well lived, of choices made from love instead of fear, of second chances earned through daily work. The city breathed around them, eternal, indifferent, beautiful. And in that moment, Sophie understood the final lesson. The heart speaks a language that transcends words. It speaks through action, through showing up, through choosing someone even when they're broken, through rebuilding what fear destroyed, through believing that people, all people from all places, deserve to be seen, to be heard, to be valued. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what truly matters. Sometimes you have to break to rebuild stronger. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about never falling. They're about falling, getting back up, and choosing each other in the rebuild. And sometimes, the universe speaks through an impossible moment. A desperate CEO, a janitor's daughter, and 300 million reasons to say no, and asks, "Will you be brave enough to say yes?" Sophie and Ethan said yes. And they kept saying it every day after, until saying yes became who they were. What language does your heart speak? Have you ever had a moment that changed everything, for better or worse? Share your story of second chances or impossible courage. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect, who saved you when you needed it most. Because no matter where you come from, no matter what language you speak, no matter what mistakes you've made, your story isn't over. Second chances exist, redemption is real, and sometimes the person who broke you can become the person who helps you rebuild, if you're both brave enough to do the work.